Think it's time we rise up, people. It's time's up, people. You can talk all you want, but it won't change a thing. I wanna know what you do. Hey y'all, this is Jody, and today is a very significant day. We are, myself and friends and allies of mine in the fight for reproductive justice, are here with me at the State House, New Hampshire State House, and we are speaking on 3 bills. Well, registering in support of 2 and then speaking on 1. It is an amendment to the Constitution that will codify an individual's right to make their own reproductive health decisions. It is the individual who is in that situation who is best suited to make that decision, along with their doctor, or just because they make that decision. Let's be real. Anyway, and so we're here today. My good friend and ally, Representative Amanda Toll, is the one who introduced this. It's the CACR 18 to be a constitutional amendment. And if this passes, then it will go on the ballot so that it will be basically a ballot initiative. And so that people, when they are voting in 2022 for their representatives and other seats, they will also be voting on whether they think that this should be added to the Constitution. So that is one of the things. There is also a repeal of the restrictions that were recently put on last session. We had kind of a red wave, and an attack on people's right to make reproductive decisions. In many circumstances. And so there would be these restrictions and things like that that make it difficult for people to access their reproductive health care and make those decisions. We'll be getting footage of the speakers, Representative Toll. I'm sure we'll start it out. She is the main sponsor. Citizens will have the right to speak after any legislators do. So it's a pretty exciting day in Concord. Okay, so we'll keep you posted. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Up and Up. Well, let me actually first introduce my guest. I have Renee Montiel. She is a reproductive rights activist and also a full spectrum doula, and she is also a very good friend of mine. Renee, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Jody.
Yeah, thanks for coming. So we're going to have a little bit of, we're going to try and explain a little bit of what's happening in New Hampshire, which is essentially a microcosm of what is happening in other areas of the country and in other states and state houses all around the country. I'm sure that you've heard about this subject. I think it's really, really helpful to understand kind of the machinations of kind of how this is happening, and and so that people can be aware of what's happening in their own states and know what they can do about it, right? So started off real quick with a little bit of history, right? So last year we had essentially a red wave in New Hampshire, where we're kind of, we've traditionally been like a purple state, right? And it kind of goes back and forth. So it'll be the Democrats, will have full control, and then the Republicans will have full control, and it kind of goes back and forth. And at least for most of the time that I've lived in New Hampshire, there's been a Republican governor. So at the end of all of these things, there is a Republican, which is not a great situation. But we had a whole bunch of people come in to be elected into the House this last time around that are diehard Republicans and really, really extreme Republicans. So, for example, we've never had restrictions in New Hampshire as far as abortions are concerned. We haven't really had these kind of laws. And so what happened last year was they put out a piece of legislation, HB 625, right? So they put out this bill, and Fetal Protection Act. It passes the House, which was very heavily weighted to the Republicans. It passed the House, but it died in the Senate. So because it died in the Senate and they still wanted it to pass, they put it into the budget. So it's just this really, really smarmy way of saying fuck democracy. You know what I mean? Oh, the representatives, representatives of the people voted against it. So we're just going to insist and put it in this larger piece of legislation that, obviously other things are dependent on. So that's where we stand. So they put in a ban after 24 weeks. There are repercussions for any provider who goes against that or who provides this, medical service to someone in New Hampshire. And so that's where we stand right now, is that January 1st, that went into effect. And that is the law of the land in New Hampshire at this time. So what happened this past week is that we had there were actually 6 bills that were introduced, or I should say 5 bills in one constitutional or concurrent resolution, right? So on Wednesday, there were 3 bills that we were in opposition to. One of them, HB 1181, deals with, this is allowing a biological father to petition the court for an injunction prohibiting the mom from getting an abortion. That sounds great, right? Just no. And then there's HB 1477. This bill prohibits abortions. This is the fetal heartbeat bill. And then the last one was HB 1625, and this repeals basically the buffer zone that is around anywhere an abortion provider, and so that people cannot stand there and harass people as they go into the doctor. And then the next day, there were, like I said, one concurrent resolution and constitutional resolution and 2 bills, right? So the constitutional resolution was for a constitutional amendment that would enshrine reproductive rights, right? That essentially would enshrine reproductive rights, whether you choose to have an abortion or if you choose to give birth. So this also covers and protects people from forced sterilization and things like that, which may not be something that we think about very often, but that absolutely is right. So so that it covers all manner of reproductive rights. The second one, HB 1674, was basically legislation that did the same thing, but not in the constitutional way. So it was without being an amendment to the Constitution. This is legislation that would have the same effect in protecting people's reproductive rights. And then the other one, HB 1743, was the repeal of what they passed last year in the bill. It's really, in the budget, which is really interesting because when I'm looking at, research about this, a lot of times it talks about, it kind of uses these terms. So it's talking about what is it, like the Fetal Health Act or something like that. And it's interesting that they keep referring to it as the Fetal Health Act. So we went to speak at these committee hearings, and what do you think, Renee? What do what kind of feeling did you get from going there?
It was interesting. One of the things I can't stop thinking about are the you're gonna laugh. That's the gang colors of the.
Oh my god! So they had. Oh my god! All right. So we're sitting there. We came back. What was it? We were there for like the first one, and we both spoke at the first. We both gave testimony on the first one, and then there was a break in between. And so we come back after this break and we're sitting there and I'm like, yeah, that's really weird. Like doesn't it look like her scarf matches his tie? Like, isn't that strange? I keep looking at it. Is it because they're both yellow? She's like, no, they're the same thing. And then we realized that another guy was wearing the same tie.
Apparently yellow, we found out, is there's a pro-life fabric, and yellow is their gang color. That's why we saw so many of the state reps with like yellow shirts or yellow ties that apparently hadn't gotten out and purchased their particular pro-life necktie fabric.
So the committee will vote on whether or not it goes, or not whether or not it goes, on their recommendation. So what happens is when the committee votes on it, it's either ITL, inexpedient to legislate, or ought to pass. Those are the 2 things. Or of course they can table it, or they can say for, hold it for more research or whatever. And then they're, in theory supposed to go back to it or whatever. But if, whether it's inexpedient to legislate or if it's ought to pass, it still goes on to the full House. It's just that if the committee rules it inexpedient to legislate, it's very likely that it's not going to pass the full House. And I realized that one of the members of the committee, Representative Notter, was actually one of the sponsors. She was a co-sponsor on the original bill that didn't pass, the 625. She was
okay, that makes sense.
Yes, and she was one of the people she was the one who was wearing the scarf. And then, the guy next to her and the guy behind her were wearing the matching ties to her scarf. So it's very interesting. Oh, of course, that makes sense. And, you were just saying there was one person who was giving people a whole lot of hard time. And
yes, his name.
Right. It was very interesting because you could tell that, when she would ask questions, if it were people who were, of course, when we were there, the bills that we were there to speak on, we were in support of. So anybody who came up in opposition, right? So there was, there's Cornerstone, which is a lobbying organization. They sent their, attorney down there, registered as a lobbyist kind of thing or whatever. And, him, for example, but anyone else, the New Hampshire Right to Life and, these kind of things. Anybody from those organizations that she asked for information on. One of the things that I thought was really interesting about was that, what was that woman was talking about? That when you have an abortion, you are more likely to get cancer, that abortions give people cancer. And we're sitting there in the room, what are you, what do you talk? So the best part is, someone asked her, one of the representatives, I think one of the Democratic representatives, but I'm not entirely sure. I'm pretty sure. But she asked her, where did you get that information? Where's the evidence that that's actually a thing, that's true? And she looks over to the Right to Life guy over here. It's oh yeah, that's who I got it from. Where did you get that information? It's she doesn't even know. She doesn't even know. She just is, anyway, it's very disturbing to see people who have information that is not backed by evidence. That is, we're all used to it at this point.
It seemed like those people, the only evidence that they were using, the majority of the evidence that they were using was only their own personal experience and how something worked out for them in the end.
Right.
That's not a good enough reason to.
And he begged me not to. He said, please let me have the baby and I will raise the baby and you don't have to have any dealings with me or the baby. But I was selfish and I made a horrible decision. It was the worst decision I've ever made in my entire life. I regret it to this day. It was terrible what I did. He had every right, as the father of that child, to have that child.
Let me tell you, the first thing that a person who's been raped thinks about is whether that person will come back again. This bill makes that nightmare come true.
You know what? At the end of the day, I bring my own experience too. You bring your own experience too. When I spoke, the one thing that I wanted to get across was that, yes, I am an abortion storyteller. I have been through this and I have had to make that decision and I'm not ashamed of it. And this is, whatever. So this is what happened. What I really wanted to get across is that every situation is different. I'm not here to tell you this is what happened to me, so we should make laws based on that. No, I'm here to tell you, I'm here to be an example of the fact that there are a variety of situations and you cannot judge everyone. You can't paint everyone with a broad brush, nor should you be legislating on that. That's up to an individual and their doctor to make that decision.
That was the difference between their storytelling is to limit other people.
Right.
Because our storytelling is that, hey, there's a lot of reasons and people have their own reasons and, we can't limit people. And they're like, well, I've got this story and I did it this way now. Like the one woman said, women are strong. They can carry this pregnancy and then give it up for adoption because women are strong. And I'm like, maybe you don't want to carry. That's the whole thing is like, maybe someone, it's not that they don't want to be a mother, but maybe someone also doesn't want to carry a pregnancy. Maybe someone doesn't want to be pregnant at all. And there may be a myriad of reasons. To use that women are strong as a means for, coerced pregnancy doesn't.
I think it's important we take note of where we are as a state and as a country. It is getting harder to make ends meet. How do we raise children properly when we as a country don't provide paid parental leave? We don't provide affordable childcare. Healthcare is not affordable in this country. Welfare is extremely frowned upon, yet we're living in a state that hasn't raised minimum wage in 13 years. The cost of living has been exponential. We don't support affordable college. We don't have affordable housing. This is all correlated to raising a child in a healthy environment. If I were to get pregnant, I would be needing state help. If I were to be placed in this position, I could not provide the best quality of life for the child. I think this is a shared decision meant for the woman and the male, not the government's. There are hundreds of thousands of kids in foster care looking to be adopted. I think it is also worthwhile to point out that there can be life-threatening health complications with some pregnancies that could endanger the woman and/or the child. Like others said, where is the woman's voice in this bill? Women have just recently gained equal rights. Women used to not be able to open their own bank account. This feels like we're going backwards. And as others pointed out, is there any obligation for the father to stay in the picture after birth? If this bill passes, then so should universal health care, child care, and tuition-free college. That would be a start. That would be pro-life.
Now, let me tell you a little bit about New Hampshire. Is that New Hampshire has the largest legislature in the country, the largest, state legislature in the country. And that's because we have 400 seats. This is for 1.4 million people as of, I think it was 2020 when I looked this up or whatever. Anyway, so as of the last couple of years, we have 1.4 million residents, which equals out to, we have essentially one representative for every 3,500 people. What other state has that? You know what I mean? And so it's very easy for a small amount of people to get people elected into the House. And so this, organization of people, basically libertarians who do not want to have a government, want to essentially abolish the government. And so they decided to have everybody move to New Hampshire. So we were looking at this as we're standing there because we're trying to figure out, this whole thing with the ties and and kind of all this stuff. And, one of the things that I, showed to Renee as we're sitting there and trying to record it before I was testifying is, the Free State Project. And it's talking about how there are 5,000 people who've moved here already. And over 19,000, it was close to 20,000 people who had pledged to move here then. So what they're doing is they're doing it. They're like, let's all move to New Hampshire so that we can take over the government and abolish the government. We have I think it was three bills this session alone, like this year alone, that are to secede from the country, like to secede from, the nation. So these are the people who are doing this. But here's the thing, at the end of the day, what I think is really interesting is these people who are like free staters, which is abolish the government. That's what it is. We don't need a government. We have them right here in Keene, folks who, go to the school board meetings and stand up and speak and say, what I would do is I would just make the budget zero and, we don't need a school board and all this stuff, like this kind of stuff where, they just want to get rid of everything. But what I think is really interesting is a group of people who are so dedicated to not having the government in their business. These are now the same people who are having the government get into women's like people's business, reproductive business, like literally not even like to your domicile or like have a right to something, you know, whatever, pull you over or something like that, but literally like inside your own body. So like it makes no logical sense to me. If you don't want to have government intervention, how can you be the same people who are turning around and advocating for the government to restrict your personal health decisions, that your private medical information would be anyone else's concern or anybody else's business, is beyond me. That is the ultimate in like government overreach. And I'm not somebody who wants to get rid of the whole government. I want to have good government. Anyway.
Yeah, and then to show up at these hearings and scoff at, you know, gynecologists talking with, you know, speaking in facts, and like, okay, these facts clearly don't sit well with the, you know, free staters that were sitting behind me. I was like, I turned around, I was like, it's a gynecologist. She's giving us facts right now.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But, you know, of course I mean, there was at one point when I could not contain myself. And that was the woman who stood up and she was talking about, now she was there with her personal story. It's just like, okay, here's a success story. They thought that something would be wrong. They said it's very likely that something would be seriously wrong. And she went against the doctors and whatever. So this is supposed to be why none of us, this is supposed to be why all of us, you know, should be forced into labor. You know, but, you know, because this happened, miracle, wonderful. That is wonderful. I am so happy for you. Please don't use that as a reason to restrict my rights, right? But in the course of her having this explanation, I don't remember exactly how she put it, but essentially what she said was, so because some people's moral compass is off, right? Or they're just stupid. And I know she didn't use the word stupid. I think she said ignorant. I don't know. She said something like that or whatever. And then the very next sentence after that, she said, now I don't judge anyone, but blah, blah. And I'm just like, I don't judge anyone. That's not judgment. Oh, I don't know. You're moral. You either are immoral or you're dumb, but no judgment here. It's like, what is, but this is the logic. It's not based on what is actually evidence.
I was squirming in my seat going, oh my God.
But, you know, this guy who's lobbying for Cornerstone, I believe it was, and he stands up there and he says, oh, well, you know, they're taking advantage of, you know, a small state, and these Democratic operatives are, you know, these big money Democratic organizations are having people come in here and taking advantage because it's a small state and they can make a big difference on the state level. And I'm like, y'all are cats calling the kettle black. Like, that's all, like, it is insane that you're saying this, because this is literally, we have seen this influx of money to, not to individual candidates. As far as I know, what it is it's the influx of money to the Republican Party. And I'm not saying that Democrats don't do it. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that there is a ton of money that is coming in and being well outspent, and being sent in to these local races, you know, people running for our state house and things like that. Amanda Toll is our representative for Keene. So she was the one who, she was the prime sponsor of the constitutional amendment. Thank you so much, Amanda. Like, she's just tireless advocate. It's absolutely amazing and wonderful. And she's also an abortion storyteller herself. You know what I mean? Where that was something she needed to do. So anyway, but I was talking to her after, I think it was just after the first one out in the lobby. And she was giving me the numbers of, because you could register online. You can register your support or opposition, right? Now, mind you, it doesn't instantly become an amendment. So it goes to direct democracy is essentially what it is. So it goes on the ballot. So that's not the end all be all. If this committee, or if the House, or even if the House and the Senate pass it, it's still, that's just the prerequisites for it to get to on the ballot so that people can actually vote on whether or not they want that to be a part of our Constitution. Now, that's probably not the same process in every state, but it is the process in our state. But I was talking to her afterwards, and she was saying that it was 1,300 people who signed in to support, and I want to say it was like 130 or something like that, people who signed in against. So, I mean, think about that. That's, you know, that's 10 to 1 right there. You know what I mean? it's pretty stark, the amount of people, and that's just the people who took time out of their day, you know what I mean, or whatever. But at the end of the day, that's very indicative of what it was. Remember, these things couldn't pass as an independent standalone bill. They could not pass as a standalone bill. That's why they had to sneak it into the budget. You know what I mean? That's why they had to do that, because the people don't want it. Okay. The fact is that people do think that people should have the right to make their own medical decisions as far as reproductive rights are concerned. So when 65% of the people of New Hampshire think that people should have this right, okay, and it depends on how you word the question, because sometimes it'll be even more than that. So if 65% minimum of the people of New Hampshire think that a woman should have that right, that people should have that right, and then they turn around and they put it into the budget, it's despicable. Anyway, I don't remember what point I was trying to get to. But anyway, so what's going to happen now is that they're going to put it into, they're going to have vote on Friday. And I really hope that, we can get people to, really to reach out to the people who are on the committee. Right now, it's an 11-10 split, right? So it's 11 Republicans and 10 Democrats. I think we're pretty confident that all the Democrats are going to vote for it, and against the biological father doing the injunction and getting rid of the, these really despicable bills. It's insane to see what we try to put up as far as barriers, and just the shame that we that people are trying to inflict on people. Anyway.
With the men being able to stop the women from having the abortion, that also goes for a man that has raped his victim as well.
Are you? I hadn't looked that far into it. Are you serious? Oh my God.
That's HB 1181. Yeah, so the biological father of an unborn child to petition the court for an injunction prohibiting the biological mother from having an abortion, it does mean that, yes, indeed. And if someone isn't entirely certain they're the biological father, they can still do this injunction, and then they have to take tests, which can take a while to come back, which mean that, the woman, if it's not, and she would therefore be allowed to, it's still taking up all that time, and that it could really cause complications. So that's,
absolutely, and especially if you put a time limit on it. If you have this certain amount of weeks and things like that, a woman makes up her mind that she wants to do this at this time. If somebody, files an injunction, the biological father files an injunction, and it takes this time to do the test and all that kind of stuff, she could time out from what is the legal allowable time.
And the person that, then the rep that sponsored this bill is a preacher. Yeah, I looked it up while we were sitting there. It was really just because it's a really disturbing bill, and they were stating that, like, okay, so if the father, it is the father, the tests have come back, and he's going to therefore be responsible for providing financial security for the woman or person that is pregnant, so that they can have like a nutritious food and then pay for the hospital bills and what have you. But the problem also with that is that our state can't even enforce child support. So a woman, it could be forced to carry this child, get stuck with all the bills, get stuck with everything.
It's interesting because I know from experience that, just the situation of things being held up, health insurance for me. My health insurance was canceled twice because of reasons that had to do with an absentee father, is what they call it. And the entire time I was on Mass Health or, whatever on Medicare, it was the entire time. It was because my fiance had passed away. He was dead. The father was dead. They knew that. They all know this. It's been this way for 6-7 years. And yet they make this fluke mistake. And, oh, what do you know? We're going to cancel your health insurance until you can jump through all these hoops and, and recertify that he's dead. He's not, like, he's like, we're not going to have another documentation. It's just the same stuff, guys. But here's the thing is that regardless, at the end of the day, these are not decisions that should be made by the state. I mean, on the one hand, they're trying, because that's the thing. When you look at these things in the combination of the variety of bills that they're putting together, like like you're saying, okay, like we were just talking about, they say, all right, the biological father can put an injunction and we're going to put a time limit on this. So there's like, okay, there's this and there's this. And the way that those things factor together, the whole point is just to make it impossible to get an abortion. That's all it is. The whole point is just to make it impossible. It's not, oh, we want to make sure that we do this thing. It's the whole point is to make it impossible. You know what I mean? And it's, anyway. And at the same time, these are the people who want to destroy the government. So it's like, we're going to know how to do these things, but then we're going to make the government super inefficient and fucked up. And then we're going to put it on the government to do all these things, like to follow up and to.
People, you're right. All of these people are the same people, especially when it comes to the free state people that are, doing this. And then they have their, they don't think there should be any government assistance. So you're going to be forced to carry a child, forced to give birth, and then be stuck with no help because you know that the majority of these men are going to bail because this is a big ego thing and nothing else but ego. And you're going to get stuck in a severe like poverty and just over and over again. And like, what is that actually going to do? If we look into the future after this, I mean, what is that going to do to our like communities?
Yeah.
How are we going to?
So like when you say things like, who knows if they're actually going to be there, that it could be a power trip, these kind of things, it can't possibly be taken as seriously as the person who has something growing in their body. It cannot be taken as seriously. It cannot be understood, to my mind, as intimately as it would be to the person who actually has that biological imperative. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Huge thing. Like there's times when there's like I forget which state is that, maybe it's California, trying to make it illegal for a man to take off a condom without a woman's permission. Like
yes.
if we passed, right? What does this mean for people who think that they're using protection and somebody does something? I mean, this is actually an incredibly dangerous bill on so many levels. You could be trying to escape an abusive relationship and this person's going to make sure that that's not going to happen. I mean, I just, that just makes people have absolutely no, women and people with uteruses to have absolutely no rights.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that we really, so we went and spoke recently about consent at another hearing. And teaching consent to children so that they understand what this is, and it's about bodily autonomy. At the end of the day, it's understanding your bodily autonomy, that you have a right to your body and that no one else does, and then understanding these kind of things. And so, it's across the board. It's all about bodily autonomy, and especially I can't say it enough for the people who want government out of their business to be allowing government to be, to control your reproductive choices is just, it's just absolutely insane to me. And you're right about just the sheer fact that the point of a woman or someone with a uterus making that decision for themselves, the point is because they know the situation, and to get advice from your doctor, because you would hope that your doctor is somebody who has seen your medical chart and understands whatever, understands your situation, can actually advise you, and the medical, on the medical side of things, right? So like, it just makes absolutely no sense for the government to be the arbiter of that. Absolutely none. It's specifically in New Hampshire. What can people do if they want to be able to influence this in a good way?
Ooh, okay. So what we can do is we can write letters.
Yeah. To, reach out to people on the committee. If obviously social media is no substitute for getting in there and doing whatever, but it is part of it, right? Let as many people know as possible. So you can write your own letter, but also share what you wrote. Share this video, share some information about, what is happening so that people who would also want to take action would. And like I said, social media is no substitute, but it's also very helpful because people will see it. But you know what is the thing that is going to get the most eyes and is going to get the most, or be the most likely that people are going to respond to and actually act on, is a direct message, a direct phone call, a direct email to people you know who are passionate about these things, and directly ask them, please reach out. This is what's happening. Please send a letter. And then for them to do the same. It's like, you know, I grew up in the church, so we had a prayer chain. You know what I'm saying? Do you know what a prayer chain is?
I don't.
Well, that's what it does. You know what? It's really funny because it's so ingrained in me that I literally, like, I don't know if you've seen it on Facebook before, but I'd be like, prayer chain, like prayers up. And I don't, you know, I'm not, like I said, I'm not, I am, I guess you would say, agnostic. But I still, you know, I was still believing kind of putting it out to the universe, blah, 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 and that kind of stuff or whatever. And, but anyway, but that's what I'll do. It's like a prayer chain. It's like one person, you know, sends it out to their, you know, group of people. Or what is the thing? There was, I mean, it's not, I mean, that's like in the church thing, but is, you know, it's like phone tree, you know, is that what it's called? I don't know, whatever. You know, back in the days when there was just a phone, you'd call 5 people and then that person would call 5 people and, you know, I don't know, that kind of thing. Anyway, but that's what you do. You reach out directly to people who you know care about it, who will take action. They're more likely to take action if you reach out to them directly, and then have them do the same. Not only confirm with you when they've actually done it, but for them to do the same. So hopefully, and that's going to be happening on Friday. This is going to air on Wednesday, so it's 2 days before, and hope to update you with some good news. And then if you don't live in New Hampshire, pay attention to what's happening in your state legislature. Even if you're confident, I mean, we all thought, you know, I think for a long time we rested on our laurels and thought that this was settled, you know.
Yeah, we did not think this was going to happen in this state just over 2 years ago. I remember thinking like how lucky we were. This isn't going to happen to us. None of this is going to happen. And then it's all rolling in.
Yeah. Yeah. So pay attention. Pay attention. I mean, all right. Well, thank you for coming on. And thank you everyone for watching. Please like and share, and you know, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube and things like that. And you know, we are obviously, we're a grassroots organization, and we want to bring you as much coverage as we possibly can, whether it's in interviews like this, live actions, or things like that. We want to be able to provide the behind the scenes of what's happening on the grassroots, really at the ground level. And so if you have the means, please support. I can't stress it enough. Please support. Every little bit helps. You can find us on Patreon / Real Progressives, and we will put the link below. Thank y'all and have a good week.